Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final in this series of conversations um, among us all about what we've been experiencing these days together as we shelter in place in response to the threat of the coronavirus. And so we've had 6 programs. We began with Sister Peggy McVetti, our prioress, and then Sister Jean Clark from the Garden. And then Diane, you did Angela and Laura.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jenna, you did Sal from the Dominican Youth. And Mary Pat, you did Margaret Rose from the North Fork Hispanic Ministry. And you were so busy engaging our speakers with their reflections that we thought a good way to end this series would be to ask for your reflections. And specifically around the question, what have we learned from these days? How has God embraced us in this long period of solitude, really? How will our lives be different? How will we re-emerge, so to speak? So however, and whoever would like to begin, that's the kind of general area. So kind of wrapping it all up together. Where has God been for us? What have we learned? How do we want to be?
Well, I'll say something to start us off. The day that I had the conversation with Laura, and she spoke about the situation and the needs of some of the students, the women in the programs, who many times are parents themselves, and how they are struggling to provide for their families. And it was just brought home to me again last night, participating in, or the other night, participating in a board meeting for the opening word. And Jillian, who is the director, had information from their caseworkers about each of the students in the program, and who was maybe had been employed, even if it was in a factory, and now was unemployed, or kind of showing in a summary fashion the needs of their families, so much of which related to food, that very basic of life. And so to me, all of that was just a reminder again of the ever expanding effects of the pandemic, and how some of the very basic needs of family life, employment, and food, and so on, how all of that is affected in so many ways in all of these weeks thus far.
Connected to that, you know, when I hear you talking about the opening word, I'm thinking that, you know, what's a bridge between what Margaret Rose Smythe said when I saw her to what's still happening and what's being recorded regarding, you know, Latino people. And just literally this morning, I just heard numbers or percentages again about how the Latino population and generally the American Black population is growing in numbers as far as how many are coming forth that either in some way have been touched by the virus. And it's many of them, the percentages are still incorrect because they're afraid to come forth. And so that's being, because they ensure that they would be picked up in some way if they come forth, so that they are suffering then from lack of food, lack of being able to get out, and unless they have really a lot of people in a network to help with it. And thank goodness Margaret's part of that. But you know, it's just that it is a lot landing so many different aspects of this whole issue?
I think for me, the lessons aren't foreign to me. I mean, I should have learned these lessons a long time ago. But I think they've hit home a lot more than I probably will admit to. So, Mary Pat, you were talking about the black and brown, or black and brown sisters and brothers. I always knew, I'm sure we all knew, there was such a discrepancy in terms of healthcare and housing and food insecurity, all of that. But it has become so clear to me, having lived here in St. U, every Monday we see 400 families coming and receiving food and other things by car. The other thing, you know, the whole idea of climate change now. We all know how much that's been around. We all know that. You know, I thought I knew that, but when I heard that, you know, there's no fog in California, and the waters in Venice were clear, I mean, it was like, oh my God, my eyes were just totally opened. So those two things, and I think, you know, for me, I think the biggest thing is how blessed we as religious are. That has become very clear for me. You know, we don't worry about where our next meal is going to come from. We don't worry about healthcare. So anyway, my point being is that this whole vow of poverty, this whole issue of the vow of poverty, I, for myself, I know our house and myself included, really need to look at this, you know, and really start really unpacking that and see how we can do a better job.
Yeah. And I guess for me, it raises the question, how are we being called to live more gently on the earth and with one another? I mean, the if you will, the underbelly of our society has been laid bare by this virus. And I mean, I ask myself daily, what's my obligation? What am I to do? What are we to do to promote change for the sake of the whole? Recognizing that, as you said before, Jenna, everyone is sister and brother. The earth is mother. So what is this virus showing us? I guess is my question to myself, to all of us, about how we are to live, how we are to emerge when all of these restrictions are taken off.
Well, certainly at some point, what that raised for me when you just said it is, we keep hearing about, I can't wait till we return to normal. I can't wait till we return to normal. And there really is, that is not the best way to put it, that's for sure, because there really is not going to be a normal in the way we have come to think normal is. So there was a quote, I think, that I wrote down a couple of weeks ago that Cuomo's executive secretary said, and it was something like, we're trying to, let me get the wording, I have the wording right here somewhere. I'm sorry. We're trying to build the plane while we're trying to fly it. That's what it's just everything coming together, trying to do it all at once when this supposedly is over. And it's just not going to be over in the way I think that many people think it might be.
Yeah.
So, but your words are well taken, Margaret.
I think another thing, and Jenna, I'm thinking back to your conversation with Sal, who's preparing to get married, right? And was that supposed to be in September? Or was it
Yes.
fall?
Yes.
Thinking of that, thinking of all the things I've been seeing on the news now about virtual graduations,
Yes, right.
how people are trying to celebrate with one another that way. Thinking of the deaths that we've experienced, and even just thinking of the funeral that we had here at the Mother House this morning of Sister Georgiana. And her brother and niece came, and I think, I'm not sure if the other person was a relative or a friend, but standing out in the cemetery, uh, socially distancing ourselves from one another, but you can't give anyone a hug or an embrace.
Right.
I think what we just, I guess I took things like that for granted, you know, just involuntarily, you know, trying to show with someone what you feel. You can't be inside their skin, but that sense of trying to offer compassion in that way. All of these human celebrations of the significant moments in our lives, whether it's birth or death or weddings or graduations or birthdays,
Right.
all of that, no matter how much technology might help us to try to do things virtually, there is something about being together, about human touch that we know it now in its absence, that we could appreciate its presence. And we're only seeing this now. So again, Margaret, I think, you know, you raised the question, what are we experiencing now? How will we come out of it? This is just another learning. What are all of these celebratory moments of life? The difference that we're feeling, and what will it be for us, that level of appreciation, when hopefully that those those experiences will change for us once again, we hope.
I think one of the amazing things that happened for our young people, which I don't think they expected, and certainly those of us who are older probably didn't expect it, they are yearning to physically touch people rather than using social media.
Right.
I think they've been mediated out, quite frankly. I know probably all of us have, but I never really thought that something something like that would happen for them. And they don't see it as a bad thing. They see it as, you know, something that they're actually looking forward to. And so maybe this is another learning that, you know, there's a place for social media, there's a place for our phones and our tablets and this and that, but there's also a very big place for the physicalness of touching each other and being with each other. And I think it's a wonderful lesson that they've learned, which is great, if that's a byproduct of what comes out of this.
The thought that raises for me, both what Diane, with you said, and Jenna, with what you said, is like, I look back and I say, we've been at this for what, 6 weeks?
More than that.
6 weeks, more than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost 8 weeks.
8 weeks. Okay. The sacredness of the present moment. It's really all we have.
Right.
And it's where God comes to meet us. And, you know, so we've lived through these 8 weeks, moment by moment by moment. And each moment is so rich and full and deep. And we have the time to savor it. Well, we've had the time to savor it in these past 8 weeks. And how not to lose that. as we move forward. Um, because over and over again we hear that's where God meets us in the present moment. That's where God's available to us in the present moment. That's where God reaches out to us. So it's been a wonderful experience of really trying to simply stay in the present moment. We don't know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen. So in a sense, we have no choice. We've been almost forced into that. And there's a very great blessing in that moment.
I only hope that in looking back on those moments, the 8 weeks that we've been doing this, that I can't speak for any of you, but I can say to myself, and we can say to ourselves, that's what I try to do, take advantage of that time, and really prayerfully put myself in the present moment. I know that's one of the things that the young people have such a difficult time with.
Another thing that's been uplifting early on in the pandemic, when we saw on TV people in Italy being on their balconies, singing to one another, or people in New York at 7 p.m. going out at night and applauding first responders and nurses and healthcare workers. The pictures of people in neighborhoods doing drive-bys for children's birthdays or graduations, whatever it might be, how people have become creative to respond in gratitude and appreciation for one another. And anytime I see that, it just brings a smile to my face. And that's been something good in the midst of hardship.
And Diane, when you say that, just makes me think of what your last question, or one of your questions, Margaret, about how did God embrace you, or embrace us during these weeks, and it still is continuing to. It makes me think of those opportunities that we see, the drive-bys happening, and the people making every attempt that they possibly can to help somebody else. And so I feel like I'm being embraced by the gift of time, which I know everybody doesn't have, but the gift of time, and an interest in moving certain things along that just need a little poke here and a little poke there, that are things that sort of like I was calling them the what ifs and the if onlys in life. We have an opportunity, I think now, so many of us, to move that along, and how I hope we can in some way do move the agenda as it comes our way.
So I think this is a good moment to stop. We've created these little conversations, and kind of at the end of it, we spend some time in silent prayer. So for all that has been these 8 weeks, for the joy and the pain, the suffering and the grief, the hope and the love. So for all of it, let us just pause and pray in silence to our loving God. And so we return our attention to this moment. We'd like to say thank you to all of you who have watched these recordings. We've heard that you've enjoyed them. They've been a blessing for us to share with you. It's been a way for us to use the technology to connect us in a time that we can't connect physically. We're hearing that we're moving towards reopening. Our prayer for all of you, all of us, is that we would be safe, we would follow the good advice that the experts are giving us, that we would continue to take care of one another by doing the simple things that we've been asked to do and will be asked to do as we go forward. That we continue really to pray with and for one another, and to know that we Dominican sisters hold all of you in our daily prayer, and we ask the same of you, that you would hold us and our congregation in prayer as we try to chart a course into an uncertain future. So I wonder if the four of us and all of you, wherever you are, if you might raise your hand in blessing to one another, and we'll simply close this with the words of the Dominican blessing. So if we just raise our hands. May God, Creator, bless us.
May
May
God
God,
Redeemer,
heal
heal us.
and
And may God, the
God,
Holy Spirit,
fill us
fill
Fill
us
us
with
with
light.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everyone. God bless.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank
Thanks.
you, all of you.